Now, when you look at the global economy, the IMF expects global economy to contract 4.4% during 2020, but you made an upward revision of about 0.8%. We heard the managing director say the other day the world economy was less dire than expected. Presumably, all of this is based on the hope that we will have a vaccine by early 2021, because if we are still in pandemic mode, let's say next year this time, then all your numbers again go astray. Am I correct?
No, the upgrade was because of, the second quarter in many advanced economies, while awful, was somewhat less awful than we had projected. And we saw strong signs of recovery in the third quarter. So for the advanced economy group as a whole, we've had revisions for the US and the euro area. And that's what drives to an important extent the upgrade that we have. The assumption going forward right now is that while, yes, there might be discoveries of vaccines, that it will take until the end of 2022 to bring local transmission levels down to low levels everywhere in the world. So this is not going to happen in early 2021. I mean, this is going to take a while. So that's already in our baseline. Now, the question, of course, is that is it going to be worse? Is there going to be a very serious second wave, and that's going to re-trigger lockdowns in many parts of the world? I mean, that's the part that would have a bigger effect on our estimates.
As I said, I spoke a little earlier about China itself. Is there a worry that, as the Chinese economy strengthens, other economies struggle? Do you see a mismatch? In India, we are seeing a wave of nationalism against China, and that's sort of, people are talking of restricting imports from China, go through the route of import substitution through protectionism. Is that, do you believe that's feasible, that the world must take China along with it? You need a strong China?
Well, I don't like the idea of protectionism at all, in the sense of, even before this crisis, countries were putting up protectionist barriers. During this crisis, we've seen restrictions on trade and investment going up. And all of that takes a hit on economies, on their own economies, and on their own productivity. I mean, companies are part of global supply chains, and most exporters are also importers. So it's very hard to have the same level of productivity, to be able to do the same scale of exports, if you're not going to bring in imports too. So now there are issues with the global trading system. There is a need for reform of the WTO. There's no doubt about that. But it still has to be a multilateral solution. It has to be a rules-based system, and countries need to really work together to come up with a better system that deals with the issues of the day.
Because the worry is, post-pandemic, countries have either gone inward into some form of nationalism at one level, and on the other side, inequalities within countries are widening. We're seeing that, as I said, with the high job loss figures in India, there are concerns of widening inequalities. Is that something that you're concerned with going ahead, that what the pandemic has done is a widening of inequalities and a possible blow to multilateralism and a growing focus on nationalism?
No, we're very concerned about that. I mean, inequality was a concern before this crisis, and it's growing. I mean, everywhere in the world, within countries, across countries, and the poor are getting poorer. I mean, after 2 decades of all the gains we made in terms of bringing poverty rates down, we now have projections for 90 million additional people entering poverty relative to what we would have expected just this year. And this is extreme poverty. We're not even talking about, this is extreme deprivation. So this is a major issue. I think the big solution at the international level has to be greater collaboration to end this health crisis. The problem is now less science. I think there are vaccines that are going to come out. There's going to be better treatments. There's better testing. The problem is in economics. There's not enough production. There's not enough possibility for distribution worldwide to kind of end the health crisis quickly. And that's, I think, the area where greater collaboration is needed.
So going ahead, what are the major risk factors you see? As I said, the question, I started off with that in June you predicted a contraction in this country of about 4%, and now it's gone up to 10%. So you've doubled your project. Are you worried that at this rate, come 3 months from now, your next projection could possibly again go out of shape? Or do you believe that there is genuine signs of recovery? What are the risk factors going ahead to all your numbers?
Yeah, Rajdeep, in the case of India, yes, we've had big changes. But if you look at the global level, you know, in our first forecast that we did in April, we had the world at -3%. That was a 6 percentage point downgrade. And everything since then has been within the 1 to 2 percentage point range. So you can see that, you know, that we can see economies, it can be bad, but we're also seeing signs of recovery. In some countries, of course, we've seen much bigger, you know, surprises, and India has been one of them. But I think the bottom line is that without an end to the pandemic, without knowing how this virus is going to affect lives and people's perceptions of risks when they go out to work, we don't have a, you know, the fog of uncertainty is going to remain dense. But again, let's hope that we will have the vaccines and treatments and that we'll have enough of it for the world.
You know, that's exactly what I wanted to ask, because in your blog you've used two words that were interesting: uncertain and uneven. The fact is that the Great Depression in the 1930s, and we're in a situation very similar to that in terms of what's happened to global economies, it took years for the world to recover. Do you see, therefore, the possibility that this recovery could be much longer than what we are talking about today? I'm sorry to sound negative.
I mean, there are downside risks, but there are also upside risks. If we have a quicker end to the health crisis, yes. And in terms of the great comparison to the Great Depression, Rajdeep, I don't think this is that episode overall, in the sense the global GDP was much bigger, closer to 10%. It took many years to hit the bottom. Here, we have seen countries hit the bottom, and we're seeing a bounce back. Now, all the work has to be made to make sure that you have a sustained recovery. And it's not easy. There's no easy solutions here, but you know, I think it just needs all our hands on deck.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one final personal question. You took charge at the IMF about a year and a half ago. World was gearing up for a world economic slowdown, and now you've got a COVID-hit globe. Has this been an 18 months which has sort of woken you up and sort of made you sort of just live in the present rather than predict to the future? How tough has it been for economists?
Well, I mean, to be the chief economist at the time of one of the worst crises in many generations, I'm not going to lie, has been quite a challenge. But at the same time, you know, it's also personally satisfying to be able to do something useful in your life that hopefully has some good for the world.
Dr. Gita Gopinath, thank you very much for joining me and giving us a sense of what lies ahead for India and the world economy. It's a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much. Stay well.
Thanks, Rajdeep.